Hello and welcome to today's CSI Secret Store Community Call. It's December 9th, 2021. Just the usual info to give out is this call is governed by the CNCF, so all of the Code of Conduct rules apply. If you're not familiar with that, please check out the Code of Conduct marked down in the repo. And with that, let's go ahead and get into it. Again, if you're new, go ahead and add your name to the attendees list so that we know you're here. And what we like to do is we do like to kind of do an intro to any new community people showing up. So new to me is Drew. So
Hi.
Drew, if you want to introduce yourself to the community and let us know, how you feel about the project and what your motivation is.
No problem. So I'm Drew. I work for a consulting firm, and so without naming anything, because I'm not here officially by any means whatsoever, interested in this project, definitely talking about getting secrets or handling secrets a little bit better, and particularly we use AKS, but others are out there, of course, AWS and whatever else. And integrating those with key vaults or whatever vault someone might be using is fantastic. And I'm trying to get away from using environment variables and stuff like that. So this project's been a very nice treat for the last few months I've been using it.
Awesome. Well, welcome to the community, Drew. Thanks for that.
Thank you.
All right. With that, let's go ahead and get into it. I'll start off with the announcement. So the next bi-weekly meeting would land on the 23rd of December. I think that's probably going to be in the middle of holiday season for most people. So I vote to us just to suspend it for that week. That is Christmas week, and I know actually that is holidays for us here at Microsoft and probably other corporations as well. So if everyone's fine with that, we'll resume in the new year. January 6th, that'll be the 2 weeks following Thursday. And if that's okay, we'll go ahead and update everyone with that. Any objections or anything? Is everyone cool with that? Okay, I think we're okay.
Yes.
All right. Yeah. Hey, just gonna ask. All right, let's get into the agenda here. I got one that's kicking off. I think this one's kind of been sporadic, but we're actually getting a lot of signal, and I love to hear from some of the other maintainers on other clouds. But we are starting to get a lot of discussion on the availability of having the CSI secret store experience on kind of like serverless platforms. So, at Microsoft, we have our Azure Container Instances, and I believe in my quick research, the equivalents on GCP would be like Cloud Run, and AWS would be Fargate. And so I want to kind of open this up and see if anyone else on those other cloud platforms are getting similar ask. And then at a high level, how do you think we can make something? I'm assuming this wouldn't be exactly the same, but if the experience is the same, I think that's what people are looking for, which is, hey, can I bring in some volume that is, ephemeral or some way for us to make that experience as if it's ephemeral if a container goes away. And, that's pretty much as much as I really have thought about it. So any comments or any questions from people about the ask?
I can just tell you what we've done at Google. The Cloud Run platform has done an integration with Just Secret Manager for the managed offering that is separate and not using like our CRDs and stuff. It was, like an effort that was started a while ago. And so like I think I'm not that in tune with like Knative and Cloud Run's kind of like governance or how they how they choose, what's in Cloud Run versus Knative. But I think the strategy there may be to engage. And I'm not actually sure if ACI or Fargate is Knative or if those are other platforms. But like, yeah, I could see a world
Yeah.
where it would be nice to reuse the CRD that we've defined, and
Yeah, on
probably
our
to manage.
yeah, just a little info on our side. So we have ACI, which is the Azure Container Instances, that serverless platform. So we have an integration to where what people can do is they can kind of burst out into ACI instances from our AKS platform. And so the thought is, hey, I'm using CSI secrets on the cluster itself, and I got this kind of burst out option. But if I'm bursting out and already have this set up for my workloads, I would still want the portion of the workload that's bursting out to our serverless offering to still have access to those secrets for that application. And so that's kind of how this is coming about. Real quick, Tommy. So when you mentioned Cloud Run has that integration with your secrets management, is that just through like an API that's needed in the application, or is that underlying just kind of set up when like a container gets deployed?
It's very similar to the actual like experience of the CSI driver.
Okay.
But implementation is going to be different, and like it's not using the like the CRD or like the CSI driver interface, because I think like Knative specifically doesn't support CSI, but like the user's experience on Cloud Run is that it can load secrets to the file system or environment variables, but it's not an open protocol, if that makes sense.
Yeah, maybe we can chat about that. 'Cause I guess the biggest thing that we would have to solve for is, and I guess if this is really why people are using this solution anyway, is can that experience be like a ephemeral thing? Because I guess there'll be concerns around because we can probably get into kind of mounting some file system, but then it's like, okay, can we ensure that for the round trip of that container, when it goes away, that we scrub that file system and make it as secure as like ephemeral storage. So okay, yeah, I think maybe we can figure out if this is something we want to pursue all up on the project. Anish, you got any thoughts on that? I know.
So if Knative doesn't support CSI, is that something that we can actually work with the community to support it? Then maybe we can say that any platform that relies on Knative can actually use our CSI driver.
Yeah, like I don't know if there's a path to like support CSI for like ephemeral storage or yeah, because I think it's just CSI is usually associated with persistent storage, and I think that's kind of against a lot of the Knative goals.
Yeah, I think someone asked about the same thing, compatibility with CSI driver.
Oh,
this issue you put up here.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and broadcast that. Okay. Yeah, I mean,
a stale issue that's not explicitly closed. That's yeah.
Book closed by the bot.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, what I wanted to do is see if there was I know we're getting kind of a good bit of signal on our side was just trying to see if anyone else was getting some signal. Is this something that we should, get ahead of and have a solution out there for the serverless portions of the clusters? Okay.
Yeah, and then even if they have to do a persistent, like, I mean, the CSI driver would still work with that, right? Like, it all just comes down to how you configure the but I mean, in general, I think we can see if this is something like Knative is interested in. If they are, then maybe we can see if there are any changes that we can make to make it work with Knative, like based on their feedback. Like just so maybe we can get added to their docs as like a possible solution or something from the user perspective. So that might be a nice way. At least for all the providers using Knative. And then I think when it comes to ACI and all that, like I think just having CSI support will probably be the way to go.
Yeah, I think that'd be the most like compatible strategy, right? Yeah, I think like we got a lot of signal too about wanting like secrets on the serverless platform and like Cloud Run. And I'd say that, it works on like our Cloud Run managed service, but I'm not sure if it works on the, Cloud Run on Kubernetes because of the Knative like not supporting CSI thing. So yeah, the approach that Anish described seems like it could solve those problems and keep things pretty interoperable.
I'm just curious. So tell me, do you know, like if you're on GKE, can you burst into Cloud Run instances? Is that, I'm just trying to see what the parity is from us. Is that how it works?
I'm not sure on the burst in terminology, but we have like a Cloud Run managed, which is the like you do not need a Kubernetes cluster. It is
Right.
a lot more like I think Cloud Functions or Cloud Lambda, but it takes the Knative CRD stuff. You can apply it and scale it without ever like managing Kubernetes. But if you have like a GKE cluster, you can like kind of install Cloud Run onto that cluster, and then you just interact with your cluster.
Yep.
I don't
That's
think
similar.
there's a.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I think we'll investigate this a little more and go from there. All right. So that's what we have on that. So next up is Drew. You want to chat about rotating secrets when the pod is not running?
Yeah, so I kind of piggybacked on a different issue, but I was kind of hoping it would be a middle ground solution for it. But basically, whenever there's a cron job that's running, a cron job that has completed, if the pod is lingering there, the secrets maintain because the pod still exists. They still reference the secrets, so the driver does not remove them, and that's perfectly fine. But they never rotate. So if a cron job is not frequently run for a long time, that secret could get stale, and the cron will eventually just start failing because the data is bad. At every time a cron job ran, secrets would be created, which they wanted to have them pre-populated instead of having to mount and all that fun stuff. I'm hoping that if we could potentially agree to rotate secrets for pods that are not technically running but not deleted. Those are in a successful or possibly a failed state because maybe the cron failed for something else. The secrets would stay refreshed, and the person who originally opened this incident or this issue would be able to keep their secrets if they didn't clear their pods. Like if they delete their pods, then the secrets are gone. And that's a whole other thing. But that's basically the gist of this, is trying to keep secrets updated for pods that are basically sitting idle, but they're actually shut down. and they just don't rotate. Hope that makes sense.
So for pods that are actually being deleted, the state goes to terminating before that, right?
Yes, if it's being deleted, it gets, I think there's the deletion timestamp in there and all that fun stuff. But if it's just successful before it gets pruned based on the job history limits, then it just sits there as successful, and every 2 minutes or whatever the interval is set to, it's just skipped.
So in this case, the jobs are actually relying on the Kubernetes secret, like they're basically using that as an environment variable.
Yes, in this case, these I've got 4 or 5 jobs that depend on it, and each of them logs into an Azure resource. So if the password or the resource secrets get refreshed, like in Azure, but of course the Key Vault has the update, but the Kubernetes secret value itself doesn't get refreshed. The next time the pod starts, it's going to fail, and these jobs take seconds. So they never run long enough for the interval to catch it the next time, essentially.
Yeah, I think initially when we added rotation, we basically supported rotation for every scenario, right? Like, I mean, other than terminating pod, but I think there was this specific use case where jobs were left behind, and then that was adding way too many calls for the user. And that is when we decided that, I mean, I think there was a bug before as well. Like when we initially supported rotation, the user had opened an issue where there were just too many jobs left. And then even though they were not being used, rotation was happening for every single job. So it was basically accounting for their rate limits at the external secret store. And then that was just calls that was not really something that they needed, right? Like because those pods were really not using it.
I see.
But
we're on the flip side of that coin, I guess.
Yeah, I think like it depends on the job history limit. Like if you only have 3 or 4, then that would work well. But if for other scenarios where they just don't define it or they have way too many pods, then in that case, like rotation is happening for pods that are not really using it. But have you tried this scenario where you just have a dummy pod that's used to create the Kubernetes secret, and then this Kubernetes secret is referenced across all the other jobs?
I mean, I guess I could. You're saying basically make a useless container that just sits there and runs, even though it's not doing anything, and mounts the secrets?
So it mounts the secret for only that container. So the jobs don't actually need to mount it. And then that will also create a corresponding Kubernetes secret. So it will handle the rotation and all that periodically, irrespective of when your jobs come in and go. And then your jobs can just reference that Kubernetes secret as an environment variable.
Okay, that's what we're doing. So the jobs reference, the jobs actually have the volume mounts in them. But because the successful job limits, and we always keep at least one so we can check our logs on it, because they never prune all of the pods, the secrets never get wiped.
Right. So in this case, I'm suggesting you have another pod which doesn't restart. Like, okay. So your
sits there idle.
Gotcha. Right. And then like your volume is only for that pod. So you don't actually have to mount the volume for the jobs at all. If you're not using from the file system.
I mean, I could try that. I'll have to talk that over with our devs just to make sure they don't have an issue with it. But I guess I have a follow-up question to the bug you reported. Is there, when I was going through the code, and I'm not greatly familiar with Go, so I could have been missing it, but is there any, gosh, how do I say it? Reduction and duplication. So it looked like the code is going down pod by pod and finding anything that had a mount to the secrets, so whatever it was, the provider class, excuse me. But it doesn't determine if that provider class is also used in a different pod. So if you use the same secret in multiple pods, it's going to try and rotate it those multiple times. Right. Is that correct?
It is, right? So like the CSI driver runs in the context of a pod. So like when kubelet calls is initially for the mount, it's for each individual pod, right? And then secret provider class can be used by multiple pods, but when we have to do a particular operation, we only do it for that pod. So then if the secret provider class has a secret Kubernetes secret defined, then we have to also update that Kubernetes secret because we still don't know the purview of all the other pods that's running.
Yeah. Okay. That. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. To give you kind of the idea of where, like without having to scroll through all of the meeting notes, some of the areas that we're like going in the future is for rotation. Instead of, there's a lot of code around rotation, but we would like at some point in the future to move that to the CSI interface. Added a way to get a mount call repeatedly. So like instead of us looping through pods and looking at intervals, to just let it reissue a mount call to us. Where one, we think that might be better for rotation or simplify code around rotation. And then secret syncing. We had some thoughts about actually removing that from the CSI driver and making kind of like a standalone project that can do secret syncing without having to have like this dummy pod that Anish mentioned. To allow the same use of like the CRD, but kind of decouple that from kind of the CSI driver interface, which is very much like pod to volume. So it just as a heads up, that's kind of like the next phase of development that we've been looking at.
Yeah, one thing we often get asked is they don't want, it's like some users typically either use the Kubernetes secret for environment variables or they don't, or they just use the secrets from the file system, right? So we often get asked about decoupling these two things because if you have to do the Kubernetes secret, you also have to do the mount, even though you don't want to use it. So that's why we are actually going to look into the path where we can decouple and have them as separate projects like Tommy suggested, right?
I'm actually trying to get or convince, I guess, our devs to move towards the volumes just because it'll be a more graceful restart in most cases. We don't need to actually reload the pod, but we're not there yet. But even then, volume mount itself would still be stale in this case.
Yeah, I think also one interesting thing is, so as Tommy was suggesting, right, like in the future for rotation, so today we had to build our own rotation reconciler that will do this rotation periodically, but in the future, we are switching to what the Kubernetes CSI already has. It's something called requires republish. So what that will do is it will call the CSI driver periodically for every pod and say like, hey, go do your thing. If you have to rotate something, rotate it and then update the mount and then give me a response back. So one interesting thing is even today, if we decide to remove this check and support terminating pods, I don't think Kubelet actually does that for terminating pods. So like, I think that is one interesting use case. So if a pod is terminating, I think Kubelet at that point doesn't call the CSI driver periodically because at that point, it thinks the pod is going to go away and it doesn't care about the volume.
Okay. So if you remove this, what you're saying is further down where it says the volume mount or update, whatever it was, it's not actually going to update.
Right, because I think at that point, Kubelet also skips pods which are in terminating state because it's terminating is just the last step before it's actually going to go away, right? So Kubelet at that point is not going to go through the overhead of calling every driver for all the volumes that's associated with that pod. But I think once we do decouple, then all these problems won't exist. Like, because you brought up a good point, right? Like if we are checking for each individual pod and updating the same secret over and over again. But if we do decouple the project, then the Kubernetes secret will just be tied to the secret provider class and not to any individual pod. So at that point, if we do support something like a rotation, the rotation will only happen once per Kubernetes secret.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay. I appreciate the input, and I'll definitely try that dummy pod situation, and I guess keep an eye on it and see where the project goes.
Yeah, and this is great feedback. So, like, if you have more, we would love to have you on a community call to provide more.
I'll probably keep listening in when I can. It sort of conflicts with the regular meeting I have, but we'll see how that goes.
So we are trying to change this call at least by 1 hour. So I mean, we'll post a doodle soon. So like, please add the time that best works for you as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
Tommy, you had
and
something?
oh, I'm sorry. Go for it, Tony.
Oh yeah, that just reminded me that it's early for West Coast folks. So yeah.
Yeah.
The,
Yeah, sorry.
that's all.
You good? No, Drew, I was just going to mention, yeah, the community doc is there, so you can still put in like any items you want to discuss with notes for us to consider, even if you're not present. At least we'll have it documented, and we can look at any links or anything that you've provided.
Cool. I mean, I don't think I will have much, but I appreciate it.
All right. Okay, cool. Good stuff. All right. I think that is the end of all the posted discussion. I don't know if anyone else has anything that they want to discuss while we're on the call.
Nah, I was just going to say, like, I mean, the 1.1 release will probably be something that'll happen next year because I mean, I think we're winding down and like folks are also gone for the holidays. But at some point, I think like I'm going to get together with Tommy just to see what are the things that we want for 1.1. So we created a milestone before, but I think we just want to like revisit it and see if that's still the ones that we want to do, and also like set a date for a release in Jan for the 1.1 release.
Yep. All right. Everything's to conquer there. Okay. All right. That's it. We do got some time. I don't know if there's any outstanding or any issues we want to highlight while we got maintainers here to look at. If there's anything interesting here to click on and discuss.
Yeah, I don't think we got a lot of
Yeah,
bugs. I
the
mean, since
latest.
1.0, we haven't got much.
Expected back.
Yeah, that's a helm chat bug. I have a PR open. So.
Okay, got it. Okay, all right. If there's nothing else, we'll go ahead and end the call. Thanks for everyone showing up. Thanks to you, Drew, showing up today. Again, as mentioned earlier, we're going to skip next scheduled meeting, which will have landed on December 23rd. We will pick this up in 2022, and that's going to be Thursday, January 6th, I believe. And hope everyone has a good holiday and safe holiday with your family and friends. With that, we'll see.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
See everyone.